Hello, everyone. Welcome to London. Here we are at the end of the Data Privacy Legal Hackathon. We spent 2 days with a bunch of great people who have come to create some hacks in the last 24 hours. And with me today, I got a great panel of judges. And we have, actually, I'll let you guys introduce yourself.
I'm Stefan. Is that working? I'm Stefan Magdalinski, and there's no playback. Okay, fine. So I am Stefan Magdalinski. I'm a non-executive director of Midex, and yeah, that's it.
So I'm John Cummins. I work together with Queen Mary on establishing a legal network across Europe.
I'm Wilfried de Wever. Head of a global justice innovation accelerator based in The Hague, looking at innovations, justice entrepreneurs worldwide.
My name is Ian Walden. I'm Professor of Information and Communications Law at Queen Mary University of London and Solicitor and of Counsel to Baker & McKenzie.
And I'm Ian Brown. I'm a Senior Research Fellow at the Oxford Internet Institute at Oxford University, where I do research on both the technology and the regulation behind privacy and data protection.
Ian, thank you, everyone. So, as you know, right now is a great point in history where the most attention ever is being put on the usability of data protection as it stands, and with a lot of new developments, there is the most interest I think we've ever had. And one of the biggest questions that have come up is privacy dead? Is there any hope? And a lot of people here have come and asked to solve that problem, and it'd be great to get your opinions.
They should give us They should give New York and San Francisco one collective.
That was quite a scary noise.
I think we're just here for
I guess I've been working with online stuff around privacy and various hacks and lobbying and campaigning for probably about 15 years now. And we've always been asking, is privacy dead? I think people have been asking it for a lot longer than that. And my view has always been, although I do sometimes sort of go back and forwards with being optimistic about the future and being incredibly depressed. So, like the beginning of the Snowden revelations, I was incredibly depressed, and then I saw it swing the other way and what we've learned from that, and I've become more optimistic again. And I guess the way I approach this personally is that privacy definitely will be dead if we give up the fight. So I just have to keep going in order to survive.
I think maybe I'd ask the question slightly differently, and I'd say, well, does it have value? I think increasingly privacy will have more value.
I think the fact that there are innovators working here today and in New York shows that it's not dead. So there's good ideas, good initiatives coming out, and I think that's already proof that it's not dead.
I think privacy and data protection are different things, and data protection is a field where if you have young children, I'd suggest you encourage them to become data protection officers because it's a job for life. But in terms of privacy I think will always be an important characteristic that people need to have in order to be human. And I think as we master the technology, I think, and the next generation comes along, I think we just have to think of privacy in different ways from the ways, certainly, people as old as me think of it.
I have the same view as Steph. I think privacy will die if we let it, if we just sit back and say it's inevitable. The technology is the master, not the human being. I don't think we should. I think it's encouraging to see what's been happening here this weekend and in lots of other entrepreneurs and developers and people trying to make sure that the technology does develop in a way that will protect privacy effectively.
Thank you. That's some really interesting answers, and I think that's one of the questions we can all talk to when we present. I think one of the questions we're all interested in is what kind of innovations, if there were any, would you like to see? And if there's any in particular, anything in particular that you think is important in this field?
I've always been very interested in stuff that's around advertising and the abuse of cookies and other technologies to, the stuff that's in the uncanny valley of like being really creeped out because there's people on the other side who have a lot more knowledge about you than they either admit to or present to you. And so anything to do with that always I find very interesting.
Oh, I didn't come prepared for this question. I'm going to have to think. I think for me, anything that would help people to understand. There's a couple of initiatives even here that we're going to see this evening, or at least in the States, that are about helping people to understand the small print. And for me personally, I think that would be something of great value.
Yeah, there are some places on the planet where it's almost a luxury topic, or it's theoretical. Other places it's dangerous if your data is abused and the data is being abused. So then it's a real security threat, and I think it's an important consideration. I personally also think if you are able to map the abuse of data or show it or measure it, that's very helpful. Yeah.
I think there's a great need for more work on the concept and the practice of anonymity, and the ability to work on or process data without needing to process personal data. I think is an innovation that needs more work and time.
I'm enthusiastic about tools that let people manage and have genuine control over their own personal data. One big trend, of course, we've seen in the last decade is how many people now have smartphones, and today smartphones have quite enough processing power and storage and so on that if you wanted to would let you keep control of your data rather than having to rely on laws and regulations of varying effectiveness and enforceability to protect your privacy.
Okay, so we have 3 projects that we're going to introduce, and we're going to see if we get close with this. This event here in London has been sponsored by this Center for the Creative Collaboration, who's donated us a space, and Mandrill, who's a security email company, and they've been great. And Open Notice, which is an initiative that I work on, where we started a pre-hackathon project that was sponsored by something called the Cantera Initiative in the Consent Information Sharing Workgroup. The project was to create a map of all the consent laws in different jurisdictions so that they could be used by different projects in the hackathon. 2 of the projects here, I think, has used the consent map and intend to. So that's really exciting to see. And I do believe that there are a project in San Francisco as well. But before we get to those, would you guys like to stand up and present? And if you can introduce yourselves and the name of your hack.
Should probably bring the computer.
Yeah, I'll plug that in.
Hi, so I'm Miguel Mendez. I graduated in law from the Catholic University of Lisbon, and that's sort of what I've been doing on this project, is sort of handling the more legal side of things. Will has a bachelor's, right, in computer science from Cambridge, and he really had the idea for what's going to happen here, and then I sort of acted as a wall to bounce things off and make sure everything was safe, because we're touching on a few really scary things, in particular regarding geolocation and how a lot of people unwittingly put out information that's used against them and has been ever since Foursquare came out in burglaries and kidnappings around the world. So I'm going to pass it to Will. Maybe you can explain things in better detail.
Yeah, so basically I'll show you a demo of the app in a bit, but the idea is that there's all this geolocation data that people are sharing, and on its own you think, well, okay, I'll share that I'm at this cafe because it's a new cafe, and my friends would be interested that I'm at this cafe. But the key thing about geolocation data is that a lot of the strength lies in aggregate, and so this has been found in legal cases like GPS tracking and so on. Like, someone's public location is, public knowledge, but if you then track someone over an extended period of time, what you're then gathering is information about association, where they live, possible political associations, and this kind of like combination of data can paint a much bigger picture. And so what we've done is we've gathered data we chose Twitter because it's got so much data, and looked at geotagged tweets and how that they look, and looking at sort of some of it's less a tool and more just an informational tool, or like it's a really good way at illustrating some of the points. You want to explain some of the risks of if we just made a tool?
Yeah, so the idea initially was to sort of create a search bar in which you'd introduce your Twitter account, and then you could see it. And I immediately thought, well, what's stopping you from searching someone else? And I did a bit of research on this because I wanted some legal background as well for what we were doing. And I found out that other websites had created a search bar just to show on a map where people's locations were, and while they were created with the same intention of demonstrating how this technology can be misused, they themselves were misused in several cases, and they got sued on 2 separate occasions, 2 different websites, which were I Can Stalk You and Please Rob Me, which not very aptly named. So I then told Will, look, we need this stuff. Either people can search themselves, because that's great. I think it's important for people to be able to see their exposure personally if they have any. And also to show how widespread this can be, maybe a function where you search a random user who will be anonymized, so their risk of exposure is almost minimal, because in the hundreds of thousands or millions of people around the world that use Twitter with geolocation, then it'll be someone, and there's no way to target a particular person. So from that perspective, it's far safer. Their picture doesn't show up, their account name doesn't show up. I didn't let Will add a timestamp, which he wanted to. So to the best of our abilities, people can't be abused through our application, and it serves its purpose as a demonstrator.
Cool, let's just walk through it then. So I had to come up with a name, so it's called GeoCruncher, and there's a bit of a summary here. I have to thank actually a template for just like putting together Bootstrap and stuff. So what we do is to authenticate who you are and prove who you are. We've linked into Twitter authentication. So here's my Twitter account, and I'm going, right, I'm going to let it read tweets and so on. And so sign in, redirects you back to the application. And so here we are back, success, you're logged in. And so now I can display my tweets. So that's basically what we have here is, so we can hit display my tweets, and then it's taking my login and the authentication here. And what you can see is a map of where all my tweets have been like geolocated. So you can see a stream of tweets below, and also this here, and we can view it differently. So there are various ways of viewing it, and you can see just the tweets are just the line. And by having the line, you can see actually it's the order of tweets that then presents this map of travel. So we can see that although there are 2 tweets in the US, we can tell that I was back in the UK between them. So that shows that there's a pattern of travel. So that can be useful, for example, when there's certain particular commutes. So what we can do is we can then zoom in to London with many clicks. And you can see that like certain patterns, like so there's a pattern of me going to Cambridge, which was obviously where I studied, and then we can see certain like high density clusters of these in chronological order, and you can click on a tweet to sort of see, King's Cross is grim at the moment, and then sort of like another tweet, and then a male online journalist tried to get me to tell him more information about the situation at King's Cross, and I was just like, no. But you can actually get these stories and see that and by seeing where I then went to next, you can see which train I got, and then you can likely work out which train I got on, and so actually you can generate quite interesting trends of people's travel, people's association. We could tell that I was out of London then, so if you wanted to rob my flat, then you could have easily done that. So we also have the display random users. So if you don't have stuff on your own account and then it crashes, let's try that one more time. No, okay. I'm just going to check this. If I can fix it really easily, then I will. If not, then assume that it's basically the same. Yeah, no, I don't. But screenshots. Yes, I took screenshots while it was working because I was clever. Okay. Okay, so we can see various screenshots here. So what you get for the random user is, so here it found someone in Turkey, and we can see here it found someone in Turkey, and we can see that they're mainly based in Istanbul, but we have traveled to certain regions which may have political significance, whatever, and then you just hit see a new user down here, and then it will automatically scan the map for another user. And so what we get is we get tweets, and you can click on the point to get a tweet, but we have no timestamps, and we don't have the face or the username. So in effect, if somebody actually wanted to just copy that, put it into search.twitter.com, they could find out who it was. But in essence, a random person, when you get a random person from another country, has minimal interest in another person's movements. Whereas if I can show you another version if anyone wants to see their own results, which is not published, but this is the open version where I can type in anyone's Twitter username, and then you can immediately see your ex's movements or some political dissidents movements, which was one of the main driving points behind actually saying, how do we make a tool that exposes the amount of data that people are putting online and the trends that you can see in that, while not then having it being used as a tool for people with malicious intent. Yeah.
I mean, as we said, you could search for these tweets to find who made them, but the whole, as Will was saying, the whole point of making it random and minimizing the possibility of you finding a person of your interest is really important, because if you are actually targeting someone, it's probably easier to just go to their Twitter feed and look for the stuff manually. So our actual application is not easier. It doesn't facilitate a person's stalking or a person's becoming informed about someone else. So we in no way make the commission of any crimes easier than Twitter does. So, yeah, to an extent, yes. Be careful what you tweet and about your geolocating, which is the message we're trying to get across.
If you go on your mobile and select a location to be tagged with it, it will then, I believe, automatically tag all your succeeding Twitter posts until you then deactivate geolocation. So it's although it's not quite an opt-out, opt-in situation, it very much persistently will push your geolocation thing. And a lot of the people that show up here, that's very clearly the case.
Do you have any more questions for these guys? No?
So, I mean, my question would be, if you create a tool that can raise awareness, did you already have ideas on what then you want to do with this awareness that's being raised? Or is there a follow-up, or is there a... No.
Part of the point of this tool is we wanted to demonstrate just what's publicly available, so what people consentingly and willingly put out there. So the solution to this is, if we cause people to react. Like they see their level of exposure, they then think, wait, maybe I don't want this. Because the whole point to searching yourself and finding your exposure is you can then deactivate it. You can then personally make that decision, because Twitter already offers, Twitter or Foursquare or whoever it is, already offer those security options for you to deactivate your geolocation. So the fact of the matter is people can take measures to protect themselves. That is possible. I mean, I don't even use Twitter, so that's about as safe as you can be in that regard. And by seeing, I mean, also the amount of people that use it around the world. Where this goes from here, I mean, we could host it online, so it becomes an actual website that people can use, spread it through social media, through Facebook, through Twitter. People will check themselves out, see whether it works, and then if they're happy with it, they can keep the geolocation. If they're not, they get rid of it, and at least they know.
Yeah, I'll just add that we have their Twitter off already, so if we wanted to be cheeky, then we could post to their Twitter feed. Or we could give them the option to be like, oh, I had this many points geolocated, how many do you have? Blah, 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 you know, do the whole social media link-in sort of thing. But I think it's very much awareness rather than, because I think that's the key issue. The tools are there. It's actually enabling people to use them and understand the impact of their effects, because it's the understanding that isn't there.
That's great. But you could actually just have a turn off my geolocation on my phone button.
Well, that's built into the apps rather than, so you can do that from, but you could encourage people.
Okay. Hi, Phil.
Hi. Two questions. The first is, just out of curiosity, I wonder if you got a sense of the volume of geolocation data coming from Twitter through your project, and whether you could share some of that knowledge with us. And second, I wanted to ask, have you considered cross-referencing the Twitter geolocation data with other services' geolocation data to make perhaps a more effective tool?
Yep. So in terms of the range that you were getting, like, as with a random tweet thing, you definitely saw like a bit, like it was mainly personal accounts. You get a lot of people who, if they're doing it, will do it very regularly because it's taking, you know, they'll be doing it sort of like, oh, I'm at this cafe, or they'll actually be directly pushing it from Foursquare, and then that will geotag the tweet. And if you have that automatically on for every single Foursquare check-in, then you've got someone's entire history there. In terms of actually the people that I had on my Twitter feed, then when I was going through my news feed, there weren't that many people using it. I follow a lot of privacy experts, so I'm not sure how representative my Twitter feed might be there. But like, I think it's very much happening. And also one of the other trends was you could very much see the time zones going across the world. So this morning we were getting lots of things from Turkey, Asia, around there, whereas now we're starting to get stuff from America appearing and so on. So that's just a nice sort of thing that we noticed. In terms of integrating data from other places, so I looked at Foursquare and I did the integration of OAuth for Foursquare, so it could get that. But in the end, it was like, to actually get people's Foursquare check-ins, you kind of need to have a reference to that or have them on your account. So you could get it through Twitter when you then had that and then link it to that. But I think suddenly there's the potential. It would be very easy to just add in another source of location data and just link it into the map. So technically, it's really not difficult. I think in the limited time that we had, we decided Twitter was the best place to do it.
Sure. I mean, I just really... Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to add, it's not related to your question, but there's the issue of the volume of geolocated tweets, but also this is raising awareness to the fact that people knowing where you are is a problem, because that's sometimes ignored. And in the research I did from a more legal perspective, I found one particular article that cited as many as 80% of burglars arrested in like 2013. 80% of them used social media to track their victims. And I don't think there's an awareness of that fact. I don't think the average Twitter user, the average Facebook user knows that maybe their setting is friends of my friends can see this stuff, and so they post, oh, going to the Bahamas, and their house gets robbed because it's already been cased by a friend of a friend, that guy you knew in high school who maybe did drugs and then got into debt and you've lost contact with him, but you went to high school, you got to have him, and then his friend can see your post because of your settings. I mean, that's something that people don't realize. And maybe this can help. And obviously, if we expanded it to include other forms of social media or compiled like the number of crimes committed through social media, that would help. I mean, in 48 hours or less, this was what could be done in that regard. So
that's fair. I guess just a comment. Add one more stream of data, and get a sense of who's on vacation. I call it who's on vacation, and then you can show. You get a sense of where someone is. You can show that they're not at home, how long they're going, and it gives them, it expresses the fear that I think you're going for, which is that their house is completely vacant and ready to be robbed. So maybe combined with Yelp or TripAdvisor, and you can really strike the fear of God into people.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility for expansion. So.
We do have some people in New York. Hi, everybody in New York. I guess what we're going to do is we're going to go through the presentations, and if you guys have any questions, just wave and take yourself off mute so we can hear you. All right? Excellent. All right, so the next project we have is Chris. next project. Yes. Just want to introduce yourself and the project.
Yeah. Okay, my name's Chris Saltmarsh, ex-experimental physicist, software consultant at the moment, and I got involved in this wonderful hack, which is to put a bit of protection, we hope, around geographical areas. So my bits are going to work because we'll have to do this. Here's one part of it. It's a pack of near-field tags, which is kind of the start of the idea here. These we chose because they are very non-intrusive. They're not like Bluetooth things shouting at you. There's loads and loads of ways you can do this job. Near-field tags are just one of the nice ones. On those, we write a tag, fairly large one. Doesn't mean a thing, but it is unique. And then when it's all working, a company may buy some of these with their tags locked on. Then that company will go to a website and say where they want to put that tag. Right, that's their first bit that they're going to do.
And it's normally
at the door when you go into the mall or the shop or something like that, because it's going to give some information. Well, not the tag. Then the next thing we have is an Android phone. Why? Because it's mine. And I know how to program the thing. So if you go near this tag, you wave your phone at it. It pops up saying it's read the tag. And that bit kind of works on the hack I've done so far. It then sends the name of the tag and the phone's location and its identification off to our server. The server I can't show you because it's in East Virginia. It's on the Amazon cloud. That server is front-ended by this website that the clients, the companies will go into, and by various other things, built off of Drupal by my colleague Simon over there. Are you waving a picture of it, Simon? Yeah. And that front end is backed by a database. That was the first job, to design the database to connect all the information we want. That's done and loaded with some pretend database, so even if Amazon hack it, it doesn't matter. So the idea is the phone will call home with the tag ID, and our software looks in the database to see if the tag ID is known, and if it is known, it will know what company has asked for it, and therefore it will know where the company alleges it has put it. So if they made a mistake, or they're just lying, then the phone can get told, you are not where that tag is supposed to be, go away now because they're doing something wrong. If, however, it's in the right place, the back ends look up via the consent map, once all that's done, and boil down the kind of things that the company alleges they wish to do, like they want to track you, they want to use face recognition on your CTV. All the things that they might want to do, but you have a right to say no to. So those things come down to the phone. You allow the ones you are okay with, and you disallow the ones you're not okay with. The phone talks back to the back-end server, which then emails or contacts in some way. We were just going to use email. The company, which says, our client requests that he is not tracked. If that's legally possible, then the company can do one or two things: ignore it, tut tut, or send a receipt back saying, we understand, we promise not to. At that point, everybody's happy. You're going into this space knowing that the things that you don't want to happen, the company has promised not to do. May not be the case that they don't do it, but if they are found out, we've got the receipt saying that they will. That's the really important thing. And it's also important that it's just not one people. If there's thousands of people going into this space and they actually make mistakes a lot, then we can look through our timelines and find out, you know, you've been breaking the law a lot, and that means laws, and that means lawyers, and that means money, so don't do it. On the other hand, it is possible that that such a company selling stuff would like this, because it then gets their customers more engaged in the experience, to use that horrible expression, but there we go. So how far do we get? Well, there's an app on here which reads it and then crashes. The back end has got the database with some pretend data in, although it's not connected to the consent map because that's not finished, of course, and the Drupal front end is there, and we're bolting things onto that. We can program the tags and we can read them. We can talk from the phone to the back-end server. So it's a proof of principle, almost an almost proof principle. We just ran out of time, but it's not far off.
Hi, my name's Ruben Binns. I am a researcher at the University of Southampton. I kind of joined this project yesterday afternoon, and so there's a lot of other work that's gone into it and a lot of thinking that's gone into it from the Kantara group as well.
I'm Spataro. I come from Milan. I'm working since some hours with him, and the idea is to track when we say yes online. When we say I agree, we do it many times every day, every month, every year. Stop. And we don't remember. So a simple tool to contact the owner and send some info, ask or make a campaign to ask him make a policy better in plain text, because I can't understand. So the tool find the owner of the website and immediately prepare the email with the destination correct, and we send an email already written.
Should probably just introduce other members of the team. So Phil over there has had a lot of good ideas for this and has been helping to compile the list of contact details for all the websites. So for that, he used the US Safe Harbor listings. So all the 5,000 companies, was it? 4,000 odd companies and their privacy office contact details. Who else is working on the project? We've had lots of people kind of chipping in different things. So Ines helped me write the complaint thing. Who else have we got? Various other people. So I'll run through the demo. So this is based on Valentino's This is based on Valentino's bookmarklet. So basically, what you've got is a simple bookmarklet which you can drag up into your toolbar, and then when you go to a website and you see the privacy policy, you don't really understand it, or maybe you do, but you can't be bothered to read it all because it's really long. You just press Save Your Consent. That'll take you to a page that will drag out some information about that privacy policy. So who's the company, what's the URL. It will drag in the contact details from that database of privacy officer contacts, and it will make a guess as to what the jurisdiction is of the website. And based on all those things, it will draft you an email that you can send to the company saying, look, you've written this in a really obscure way, I don't understand. As a consumer, this policy is effectively not written for me. So please can you, in order that I can give you my actual informed consent, please can you send it in a different form which just has these basic fields. And so things like what's the purpose, if it's a California-based company and you're a California resident, how do you respond to the do not track preference that I've set on my browser, that kind of thing. And so ideally these things will actually be referenced using the consent legal map, which we've been working on, which is basically a list of all the legal references for requirements of notices. So if the notice has to say the contact details, or it has to say how they honor the do not track, then it will give a little reference to that. So the privacy officer at the company that you're sending the email to will be able to look at the references that, okay, right, this guy knows that we need to change our privacy policy in this way or that way. And then hopefully they'll send you a response. And if you want, you can opt in to the system that we've set up, which will collect all of the responses. And the idea there is that we can generate a database of all the responses from the companies that will say that will provide their privacy notice in this more simple, easy to read form. And we haven't written the privacy policy for that aspect of the service yet, but we will. Once you've done that, you can put in your email here. Send that off, and it will give you a receipt of the email you've sent. And if you've opted in to our system, it will also send us a copy of that. And so then we can build a kind of picture of what all the different companies would say if they had to convert their privacy policies into something that was more usable and readable.
Okay.
Cool. Anything to add?
No.
Okay.
Perfect.
Cool.
That's great. So, is there any questions?
Do you have an example of what you'd consider to be obscure and complex, and something that you would consider to be easy to read and understand? Because let's just say the company does come back with something that's half the length. There may be a danger that they've missed something out and that it isn't as legally binding as the original document. So the thing is, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm asking this as a non-lawyer.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. My father was. And I'm studying more than 1,500 of legal documents, terms of services, privacy policies online. They are all collected on a database online, tagged, indexed. And I found in this work that there are good policies around in the web, but the worst and the most longer, with long paragraphs. So we can analyze how the people write a text. This is the first method. Then there are others. In this case, we leave the users to think, this is too complex, I want to ask you something better. So we can choose a method by computers, asking a computer, is it difficult to understand? A computer will give an answer. In this case, this is a social answer, because many people have a complaint, and we can track eventually how many we will send.
I mean, just say, for example, I don't know, the instructions that you might get from IKEA. To put furniture together, which don't actually use words. It's just pictures. And that's probably, for many people, about as far as they're going to get in terms of understanding a document. And I don't want to be too dismissive. But, and that's the sort of level that people may be willing to engage. They're certainly not going, as you say, to read through, piles of text. And so, but then again, is that a legally binding document? So,
So I guess there have been lots of different proposals for different ways of presenting privacy policies in more user-friendly ways. So there's been various projects proposing icons that are kind of like Creative Commons icons that are modular and try to represent, say, we share your data with third parties as an icon. And there are other efforts which are what they call layered policies. So you have the full legally binding document, but then it's layered, so it's like an accordion. You can squash it up and just get a summary of each section. And so there have been different proposals, and I think this is kind of slightly to the side of that, because all it's saying is if you as a user have looked at it and you don't understand it for whatever reason, you can go and request something that you might understand a bit better. I hope that answers your question.
You can follow on Twitter legal design, the hashtag legal design. There's many tweets on this.
One question. Can you tell me a bit more about the plans you have for aggregating and analyzing when you have lots of people using this? I sort of see how it works, but I don't see where it leads.
Yeah. So I guess eventually you could, once there's a good coverage, you could not go through this whole rigmarole. If you're a user of the system and say the top 100 websites already have a version of this, you could, instead of seeing the privacy policy, you could have a plugin that would just supply you with the shortened version that the company has already given in response to another user. So that would be one way of using it.
The best part is to wait for questions, because we will. Nobody now collect how many people have complaints about legal documents. So there are consumer associations in Italy for consumers that have class actions also. But this is a thing. The website is another. We can have infos about most frequently the websites. We don't know. It could be a starting point, and we can have better reports depending on the needs of enterprises.
Yeah, just one more thing on the database is that once you yourself have used this, every time you agree to a new service, you have a record of everything, and you have a record of when you agreed as well. So if the terms change later on, and then you're later on found to be in violation of those terms, but you weren't notified of the changes, you can say, look, I only agreed to this. I didn't agree to this addition that you made later on. And so you have that record for your own reference later on.
Yeah, and I think that actually brings up a good point, because you're asking how, if they've cut down the fields and they give you back a short version, then it doesn't cover them. But I think what this is doing is more it's for the user to understand, a user of the service to just go, what's the purpose, when did a copy of that consent, and what's your contact information, so I can maybe engage in a dialogue. So it's not really to cover the company. It's
just to put a tick in the box.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
I mean, it's interesting because the people that are proposing simple images is in fact the European Parliament. So the new draft direct regulation has these images, and I use those images regularly in presentations, and no one that sees them is able to understand them. So I do think there is a problem of simplicity can lead to its own obscurity, and in a way that's why this is perhaps more appealing, because it retains the underlying complexity, but just produces a new version. Is that right?
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You have a question? No, good.